back here on the Cover 3 podcast, reviewing year one for last offseason's hires, and we turn our attention to the Big Ten, where it's very obvious that Curt Cignetti exceeded expectations, getting the Hoosiers all the way to the college football playoff. But Danny, what do you think the outlook is moving forward? Like, what does the encore look like for Indiana?
I think an encore, if you're at 7 or 8 wins, I think that's a huge success. You know, it's hard to be disappointed considering the history of that school and where they've been. I actually think they might get an upgrade at quarterback with Fernando Mendoza coming in. I thought, Curtis Warwick was a little bit more of a statue and he had a really nice career there, but I do think you could get a little bit more upside about Mendoza.
Yeah, he just needs ligaments. He just needs to have ligaments in his knees, that are healthy. As we found out, Curtis Rourke was dealing with knee injury also.
Curtis Rourke disrespect, I will not stand for.
Oh, all right. I think you'll give you. We'll go up. We'll table that conversation for another day. Now you're on everybody's radars, and I don't want to say you snuck up on everybody because at one point, like everybody was aware of how good you are, especially when you started playing some of your better opponents. But I would expect this team to be at the middle to the middle upper tier. Does that make sense? Like they're not in the top 4. They're probably just out of it. They're probably just below, but that's a great spot to be if you're Indiana, especially where you've been historically.
I mean, obviously they exceeded expectations. It's going to be so hard for them to do that again this year. Like if I'm an Indiana fan, I'm hoping for 8-4 is like my dream outcome, just simply because you far exceeded what you should have done last year based on expectations going into the year. You hit a bunch of home runs in the transfer portal. Now you've been back in the portal and you're kind of rebuilding your roster again, which we know kind of a, lotto machine there. You hit some, you lose some. But also, let's not forget last year's schedule. Pretty conducive to winning football games. This year, not so much. Like the non-con is still relatively simple and clean. Old Dominion, Kennesaw, Indiana. Then you've got Illinois, which is coming off a 10-win season and gets everybody back. You're going on the road to Iowa. You're on the road for Oregon. You're on the road for Penn State. Like you have a far more difficult regular season schedule than what you had to deal with last year. So odds are you're not winning 10, 11 games again. You're just hoping to get to 8.
I mean, completely. Like the guy met expectations.
Oh, exceeded. You can't say met.
Sure, right. But beyond their wildest dreams, the odds that is the best season Indiana ever has is pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
And like even if it falls back to earth, which it likely will somewhat, I think like he can coach there for life.
Another thing to add here, he suffered what happens. His coaching staff starts to get picked apart. Mm-hmm. So you've got to go. You showed up with a huge army of coaches that came from James Madison, of players that came from James Madison, and everybody was all bought in. Now your players are starting to leave to, their eligibility's out. They're going pro. They're getting picked apart by the transfer portal. Your coaches are getting hired away to other places. This will be, the hot, not hot take angle to this, but you could make a argument that this year is more important for Indiana football in the Curt Cignetti era. Because if you just drop back down to 4-8 or 5-7, then you've missed out on the opportunity to capitalize on to that point, the best season since like the 1960s and maybe one of the best seasons ever. But if you're able to have a softer landing spot that is in that sort of 8-win kind of world, then you are redefining what everybody inside that program and around that university is going to expect from Indiana basketball. I mean, Indiana football. What a Freudian slip there.
Just insulted them casually without even meaning to. What's interesting? They do have a lot of those James Madison transfers are still there with eligibility.
Multiple year
like
eligibility.
Kamara, the edge rusher was really good. D'Angelo Pons is back. They got a receiver back. Like they do have a lot of guys that are still there that are a piece of this culture. Yeah. But I totally agree. As somebody saw, a team with a lot of success 2 years ago in Florida State completely evaporate in the road, the confidence that, people started to think Florida State is back. If you don't at least continue the success, people will quickly the fact that we're even looking at at the schedule and be like, yeah, maybe they could win that one is completely different than where you were just 2 years ago. So if they don't back it up, if they are 4-8, then we'll start looking at them the same way that we had historically. So I do think it's critical for them to at least be around that win total of 7 or 8 games.
It is important to mention, like, they played 2 playoff teams last year. They lost to Ohio State by 23 and they lost to Notre Dame by 10, but that 10-point loss was a little misleading because of late scores. So it's just like when you look at their schedule this year, it's hard to imagine. Chip, you mentioned they might go 5-7 and not capitalize on it. I don't think you're saying that's what's going to happen, but as a possibility, it's like
Sure.
I don't see that happening because, as Danny just mentioned, they're still too talented overall, I think, to lose that many games in the Big Ten. It's going to be very, very difficult against that schedule to get anywhere near where they were.
So, look, I am curious here. If Cincinnati knew that you were going to land Mendoza, like given the draft type Mendoza's getting, does he leave for UCLA?
I don't know. I don't know too much about his thinking to necessarily. Do you think he got a raise going to UCLA?
I don't know, but it's odd. Like who do you think has better job security, like Cignetti or Foster? Now Foster did coach well at the end of the year, I thought, and those guys play hard for him. But still, I mean, one guy just took a deadbeat program to the college football playoff. The other one went 5-7. So it's a little, I don't know. Maybe it was just a promotion, and he was the QB coach now.
Yeah, he was just the co-OC.
Sure.
At Indiana. Now he's the full OC. So it's the promotion. It's the raise.
Show. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And but also, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he wasn't a big Mendoza guy. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, also Tino Sinceri, like football lifer. You know that guy already is picturing his Wikipedia page of having about 24 stops by the time he hangs it up at like age 60. That's some guy that's not afraid to do a little job hopping. He'll stay in the game, and of course, he's a big part of that that Nico story. Well, let's go right there since we talked about Deshaun Foster. Bud, would you 5-7? I don't remember what their win total was last year. Maybe
it wasn't 5.
Was it 4.5?
They beat their conference win total. I do know that.
Yeah.
Right.
At first, I was like, "Oh God, he's in over his head."
Right,
and he was. They had like 9 men on punt team several times against Hawaii in that opener. I was like, this is, and some of the punt and field goal decisions were just atrocious. Like just not correct. Like hitting on 19 against a 6, right? But then it got a lot better. And I think if you're a UCLA fan, given the kind of resources UCLA has right now, I think you have to be fairly happy with the improvement that he showed. And the team didn't quit on him. And in this transfer portal NIL era, I think you got a lot of guys thinking about offseason and next year. And, man, they stayed together. They played hard.
They beat Rutgers. They beat Nebraska. They beat Iowa. I mean, those are good conference wins.
Those teams fought. So I think if you're a UCLA fan, you got to be pretty happy. And you got somebody who wants to be there, whereas Chip clearly didn't. So I think you got to be. He probably did meet expectations, yeah. Although it started rocky.
I would think he exceeded them.
Yeah, he exceeded. Yeah. But
I think if you took a pulse of not only like our media, college football media, but even the UCLA fan base, I bet there was some level of panic when he was at Big Ten Media Days and gave the now infamous, we're based in LA. Like that was awkward. It was uncomfortable, and you felt like this guy's completely in over his head. But I think Bud brings up a great point. It's something I always look for. It's like, aside from the records, do you fight? Have you thrown in the towel? And their team kept fighting. They clawed all the way to the finish. So
also, like, Bud's 1,000% right. Like, early in the year, there were some wild coaching decisions. Like opening the year in Hawaii, they won 16-13, but you're watching that game with like your eyebrows kind of like raising above your forehead.
We were texting about it. I was like, guys, I know this is kind of a nothing game, but holy cow.
What are they doing?
But this is wild.
But just looking back, like, they started 1-5. Those 5 losses, Indiana playoff team at LSU. It's LSU on the road. Oregon, Big Ten champ, playoff team. Penn State on the road, playoff team. Minnesota, I think they won 8-9 games last year. Like, the schedule was tough. Like, they were making weird decisions, but they were playing a tough ass schedule early in the year. And then once it eased up, they started beating all the teams that they were supposed to be on a slightly lower tier than, or on the same tier. So I think that's a good sign going forward. Whereas it's like, is UCLA going to make the playoff? No. But if they've already shown the ability to beat those other teams in those same tiers in their first year in the league, I think that's a good sign.
All right, later, Bud. What about Jonathan Smith, Michigan State?
Failure to meet expectations. And I put that more on, you know what? Jonathan Smith met the expectations. I will say Aiden Childs failed to meet my expectations, and Jonathan Smith suffered for it.
But that is a part of, I mean, remember when he was hired, he's always bringing his guy with him. So either it's a misevaluation or inability to develop him into a quarterback that's not going to just, I mean, what was his whoopsie daisy rate? Had to have been up there because he just chucked it a lot of times. It was up there. So I would say I think if you would have gone 7-5 as opposed to 5-7, that would have been probably where I would have seen them being. So I would say they did not meet expectations.
Was it the end of the Mel? All right. So did Mel finish the 2023 season, or are we on interim status?
He was the first coach fired.
Okay. And that was in
that's why he's on the carousel graphic, because he was the first one gone.
We actually had somebody to make, because then there was the story about the collective sending emails to players at the end of the 2023 season saying deal's up. Sorry, no more deal. I mean, I will give Jonathan Smith a little bit of time to just rebuild a healthy winning culture and environment, because the combination of all those events is pretty toxic. And so I'll give him a pass. But look, Michigan State might not be expecting to get back to where Mark D'Antonio had them for that run where they were winning Big Ten titles, playing in Rose Bowls, and like very much at the top of the conference, because you were benefiting from Michigan being down. You know, you were benefiting from, I guess that would have been Ohio State kind of in transition, right? Like you've got Urban. They win early, but not always being able to be consistent, dropping a game or two a year. But man, it's Michigan State's a place where you should be playing in bowl games every single season. You should be competitive even against the best teams. So Spartans got a little bit more to work on. About Sharon Moore.
Failure to meet expectations, man. Like there was a whole, when we started the show talking, but like there was a whole lot of stuff going on at Michigan following the national title. You lose a whole bunch of players. You've still got the NCAA stuff looming over you. I still believe that not addressing the quarterback position in the transfer portal was a huge mistake on their part, because I don't want to hammer it over the head, because I understand I said it, and they are human beings. But Michigan had a MAC level quarterback room last year. And the fact that they were able to win as many games as they did, despite putrid quarterback play, tells me that if they had just gone in the portal and got their own version of Curtis Rourke, somebody who is not spectacular, but just a guy who could compete at the Big Ten level, they would have had a much better season. They could have been in the running for a playoff berth. But the fact that they didn't do it, I think, was a huge mistake on Sharon Moore and that staff's part, and it led to them losing a whole hell of a lot of games.
Maybe it was all by design so they could land Bryce Underwood. Because, I mean, if they're 9-3, do they have, does Larry Ellison's his wife or his girlfriend? Do they chip in the $12 million, to help get him? So maybe, but I agree with what you're saying. It was very similar to Nebraska prior to getting Dylan Raiola. Their quarterback room was awful. And if you just could have gotten average quarterback play, you could have potentially been 10-2 and been right back in the thick of things. So, but I would say my expectation for Sharon Moore was kind of like, I mean, I think we were all very tepid on it. Like, we'll see. And I think that's why this year coming up is the one where I think the expectation going into this year, you should see much better quarterback play. Because I don't think any of us loved Alex Orji. It was kind of like, what are they going to do? Play some Wildcat? And like, maybe, hopefully he develops, and he just didn't. So I think this year is perfect, but I do think there's like a lot of reason for optimism. A lot of similar things. We were like, the defense still was really nasty, and they had injuries to deal with. Like, they still, I think I think they'll be fine this year. I think, like, what is it determined? Do they make the playoffs? Is how well the quarterback room is once again. But I feel like the defense still feels pretty good. The team plays hard for Sharon Moore. They like him. So, like, I feel if you're a Michigan fan, the season was salvaged with those last two games.
Without a doubt.
And it's like I go back just as my own, like, being a fan aspect of this. Like, the Illinois game, Illinois played horrible that game. Like, it was a horrible performance. I think not horrible might be a stretch, but it was one of their worst performances of the season. And they won by 14 because Michigan's offense was just that bad.
Coach K33 just asked, can anyone find Sharon's buyout? Wasn't his contract, which was cemented, signed very late in the game, wasn't it pretty reasonable? Like, where it was kind of, if this season doesn't go great, there could be an out.
I don't know off the top, but I think
I don't either. But I feel like his salary wasn't something that was crazy, and the buyout wasn't crazy. And I think some of that was the fact that he was elevated from Harbaugh. He was kind of the one that made sense where they didn't go.
It's very
back
low.
up the truck to somebody.
I mean,
according to MGO blog, Moore's buyout is $5 million and goes down to $1 million each season he coaches.
It's kind of standard for zero head coaching experience, promote from within contracts. You go win big, you get another deal, another contract extension. Let me kick this one at you. I have almost Billy Napier-like read on Sharon Moore's future at Michigan, where Napier was tied so much to Lagway that now it's Underwood. And I don't know what Underwood needs to or will show, but having Underwood show something and having Underwood not hit the transfer portal after the season, all those things seem to be a big part of the Sharon Moore outlook, both in terms of the way people feel about him, but then also Michigan's success. He's an offensive coordinator. You can't go out there and just have a team that is going to try to win every game 19-13, especially if you've got a 5-star number 1 overall prospect. So I'm getting very much like Bryce Underwood might be the key if this season, let's say they lose to Oklahoma. Let's say they lose a Big Ten game that they don't, really deserve to lose or that they shouldn't lose. Might want to break glass in case of emergency if Mikey Keene is your starting quarterback at that point.
Especially because their defense will still be good. I don't know if it will be as good as it has been the last 2 years, though.
Yep. What about Jed Fish at Washington? Kind of below the radar.
Very below the radar.
I'd say Met, but I don't think it was a failure or a success. It was just kind of all right. We talked about it, and he got kind of annoyed with me during Big Ten media days when I talked about rebuilding. And he's like, it's not a rebuild, it's a refresh or whatever. It's like, it's a rebuild, buddy. You were pretty much bringing in an entire new roster. Not saying you were, but it was a tough situation because they had a whole new coaching staff, a whole lot of new players, a team coming off of a playoff title game, appearance. But I would say, by and large, you probably wish you had a few games back that you could have won. But I still feel optimistic going into this season because of what they have at quarterback.
Same.
He's pretty special, and I don't think enough of the country is kind of aware of what Desmond Williams could be. I think this could be a year to keep an eye on Washington under the radar.
We did end up giving, not only are they going to be in a position where you play DeMond Williams a lot, right? And now you're just sort of, taking the training wheels off. He's going to be all systems go. And he's got a wide receiver that we talked about in the mock drafts, Denzel Boston, another player who could end up being one of the top wideouts. That should be a lot of fun to watch in Washington.